Welcome to another episode of Health Creators. This is Liv, and I'm joined here today with Sebastian, founder and CEO of Hi.Health. And today we're going to be talking about what McKinsey taught me about being a CEO.
Hi, Liv. Thanks for having me here.
So let's get started. The topic is around your journey becoming a CEO, and we did kind of anchor it around having been at McKinsey, and I always think it's very interesting when I see someone come from a big company like McKinsey and then decide to build a startup. And so I really wanted to dive in and understand, what your top learnings were. Is it a useful thing to have done, do you think?
I think it's definitely a useful thing, and I advise everyone who wants to uh, learn and see the world after studying to consider going to one of the large consultancies. So for me, it was a great experience. I really liked it. I learned a lot in various topics, and so it was a very useful journey for me. And yeah, just recommend it to everyone after studying. But I think it's then you also need to make a conscious decision at some point in time if you want to stay in consulting or if you want to move out of consulting, because it's like a very special industry in itself, of course.
What do consultants actually do?
It's so most of the time you are on like 3 to I would say 6 months projects,
Yeah.
and there are large corporations and they struggle with a certain topic, and most of the time it's very strategic topics that the executive team needs to have resolved in a short period of time. And oftentimes those companies don't have the internal resources to work on those topics, so they bring in consultants because this has like two benefits. On the one hand side, it's an additional team that can work dedicated on a topic,
Yeah.
and they are very experienced because also within McKinsey you tend to specialize in a certain area, so
Yeah.
you really know the topic very well, and this is what you then bring to those large corporations.
I see. So you almost were like solving problems for bigger companies, and then you decided to then go into building a startup. So, how have you found that journey of transitioning from being in such a large organization to building one that I guess when you first started was like maybe you and your co-founder?
Yes, it is a tough, or for me it was a tough transition because um, at McKinsey you have all these additional benefits.
Yeah.
Everything is taken care of, and it's very simple things like the IT equipment, travel booking, all of that. You don't need to care about all these things,
Yeah.
and you can basically reach out to anyone within McKinsey and discuss certain topics. They act as sparring partners, and this you lose from one day to the other. So that was something I missed. So what I did very soon after I left, I built my like an advisory team of my own. I could say so. I reached out to certain people and used them for discussions and for sparing and just for evolving our business model as well. And of course, I mean, Frederick, my co-founder, was a very essential part of that team as well.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so that was I think that was the one of the key steps for me in the transition.
And what sort of things do you think you've taken from your experience at McKinsey and brought to Hi.Health? Because I guess a lot of maybe more technical founders would build a company that's probably quite operationally different to maybe what you've built because of your experiences.
Um, so the one thing that I learned at McKinsey and which has been super helpful ever since is to structure problems
Yeah.
in a way and really understand certain problems and go to the bottom of it. So McKinsey has a very structured approach on
Yeah.
how you problem solve, basically. And this is very helpful because there are like also frameworks which are like MISI. You always try to be mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, as they call it, which helps you to get really a full understanding of a topic and a problem, and then you can use it to create a solution. And this is what we do at Hi.Health on a very regular basis,
Yeah.
which is also ingrained. And I think that's one of the very important learnings.
What were things that you didn't learn from McKinsey where you felt like, okay, I'm in the deep end?
Also a lot, because McKinsey is, I mean,
Yeah.
you're very specialized in a certain area almost. But then becoming a CEO and founder of a startup, you have so many topics, and
Yeah.
you need to be to cover so many elements of the business, being it like HR, finance, and so forth, and all the business development and yeah. So there's a lot actually, and you need to be able to switch within seconds because in the one
Yeah.
minute you have a call on an HR topic, you maybe have a difficult conversation with someone in the team, and in the next
Yeah.
second you have a biz dev, a sales call with a prospect, and you need to engage them and basically convince them to buy your product. So this is one thing that you don't learn at McKinsey and that you need to learn over time, I think.
Was it also interesting, essentially transitioning from being cog in a wheel to being wheel? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes, yes. This also took me some time to
Yeah.
get used to this new setup and way of operating for myself as well.
As in way of operating because you just have so much more responsibility. So does it feel like very different to when you have a job and you're just like, okay, I'm done for today, you know?
There is a difference because
Yeah.
so in a job you work, most of the people work hard and work long hours and
Yeah.
but then in the end, if you are done, you can go home, or on the weekends you don't need to check emails or do
Yeah.
calls every now and then. Now as a founder and CEO, it's yeah, I do my emails on a regular basis on the weekend as well, but also I don't see this as work. Somehow it's also like my hobby, and I think that the
Yeah.
passion that comes in there also helps to not see it as work, and basically I get energy from doing things and working at High.
What was the moment that made you transition from, this cushy job to okay, let's start from the bottom and build a startup, build Hi.Health from like the ground up?
It was my co-founder and I. We know each other for a very long time. So since university, we knew each other, and we were always thinking around. We observed that the insurance industry and or the health insurance industry has some flaws, and we were like for years we were struggling basically
Yeah.
to better understand, okay, how could we what's the real problem there, how can we solve that, and at a certain point we just decided, okay, let's jump into the cold water. I left McKinsey. I've purely focused on that topic because we had the conviction that what we do can really solve a big problem in society, and I fundamentally believe that private health insurance will be more important in the future. and we really need to address some of the issues within that industry, so that the industry in itself can become more efficient and more user friendly, so that in the end more people can afford and have access to healthcare.
Can you give us your elevator pitch?
So we are on a mission to improve access to healthcare, and we're
Yeah.
doing this by implementing modern payment solutions into the claims process.
Yeah.
Uh, and we do this, for example, also by producing white label payment cards to for insurance companies, so that they can
Yeah.
distribute those cards to their members, and the members can use the cards to pay at any pharmacy or doctor office, and they
Okay.
don't need to go out of pocket.
I just understand what you do just from that just now, because I was a bit confused, but now I get it, because it's like every time I go to a private doctor now under insurance, I pay for it and then I need to claim it back, and
Correct.
it's a big nightmare, because a lot of the times you can't claim it back. But how do you deal with that, right? What if a patient wants something, and they actually cannot claim it back, and they actually would not have been able to pay for it?
So the way it works is you use the card at the doctor's office, for example, and you can only use the cards at a doctor's office, so you
Yeah.
can't pay in a bar,
Yeah.
which is a frequent question that we get.
Okay.
So you use the card at the doctor's office, and then it works similar to an expense management
Yeah.
tool like Expensify or Yokoi, all of these tools. So you use the card, you take a picture of we send you a notification in the app right away. You
Yeah.
take a picture of the invoice, and then it's up to the insurer to do the assessment of the claim.
Oh,
But
I
the claim
see.
is paid right away, and the funds come from the insurance company. Based on the
Yeah.
assessment of the insurer, if they come to a conclusion that you received treatment that they will not reimburse, then we will collect the money from you and,
Oh, I
and give to
see.
the insurance company. So
Okay.
by doing that, we just flipped the claims process,
Yeah.
making it much more
Patient friendly.
patient centric, and we improved the user experience there
Yeah.
tremendously. But also it allows us to give the like data in a structured way to the insurance company, which helps the insurance company on the other side to do the claims assessment, because it's digitized data. It's
Yeah.
basically the claims handling costs come down, and also basically the fraudulent claims. There will be less fraudulent claims, because each claim that you make or that you send to the insurance company also needs to be reflected in our payment
I see.
infrastructure. So there are a lot of benefits for the insurance company as well.
I see. I mean, I'm just thinking, are they going to go for this? Because I feel like they will lose a lot of money if they have to pay out claims. You know what I mean? Like, obviously they should, but like, I feel like their whole business model is around not paying that out.
Yeah, I think this is the perception,
Yeah.
but in reality, they need to pay the claims that are covered in the
Yeah.
policy. And
Yeah.
for some claims that are not covered by the policy, they are just not allowed to pay them out.
Yeah.
So I think we do make it easier to claim and basically to receive money back.
Yeah.
But this is also a trend that we see in the insurance companies, because they realize they need to become more user centric, and some of the insurers that we are talking to, they want to use this for basically when selling policies to large corporations. And they use this as a benefit, as a USP of their policies, that they say, look, we also provide you with those cards. And this has a value in itself. And so the insurance companies, they are actively pushing this to their clients even.
Interesting. And I think we briefly discussed this beforehand, but you're currently in Europe and you're looking at other markets as well. And so I guess one question that was on my mind is like, how do you make this something that's adopted in Europe? Because at the moment, insurance seems like a very nice to have rather than need to have in Europe. I
Hmm.
mean, you're not going to be turned away if you're dying. It's not like, certain healthcare systems.
No, in Europe, it's true. In most of the countries, it's private health is an add-on that you purchase on top of your public coverage. But I think with everything that's going on right now, so the public healthcare system is struggling because of the aging
Yeah.
population, the rising costs, the surge in chronic conditions,
Yeah.
and I fundamentally believe that the level of care will go down over the next couple of years, and we can see this already, for example, in the UK. And to fill this gap, private insurers needs to step in and will step in. So I think we're seeing a shift right now from like people only being covered in the public sector to a model where people also look and buy private health insurance. And I think and our part in this game is to make sure that that the system becomes more efficient, more user centric, so that more people can afford and get access to those insurance policies and care in the end.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because my observation is that in Europe, insurance is almost like a B to B to C product, right? Where you buy it for your employees, and then, I have insurance because my company
Mm.
covers me rather than I cover myself,
Yeah.
which is the model that you typically see in Asia or US.
Yeah. So but our system works for both buyer segments. So for
Yeah.
individuals on the one hand side, but also for corporates. And this is in Europe. We see a lot of uh, uh, pull from the market, but also like from other regions. We are in discussions with companies in the Gulf region, in Asia, in the
Yeah.
US, because they all have similar problems in a sense.
Yeah, and when did you start this?
This
Hi.Health.
the company we
Yeah,
started in 2019,
2019.
and we
Yeah,
focused on Germany, very much on the reimbursement of medical claims, and now we expanded the platform so to really
yeah.
have this payment um, platform integrated into the existing claims platform.
So you started in 2019, just you and Frederick and advisors. And how big is your team now? Like, what stage have you got into?
So we're now 17,
Wow. Yeah.
uh, and it was basically we constantly evolved over the years. I think
Yeah.
we had a very like the way to do it. We started. Frederick and myself did then a pre-seed round early on, so that we could bring some more people in. We were 5 people in the first, I think, year and a half. Then we did a seed round after that, and now we grow the team constantly. Yes.
And you mentioned, this concept of turning your advisors into sparring partners. Is that something similar that you've implemented into your team as well, of just being able to kind of have that back and forth? And how did you establish that culture of people being able to actually, say that you're wrong about stuff?
I think the um, culture will adapt on how you as a founder behave, and this is one thing that I underestimated in the beginning, that I as a founder or we as a founder are so crucial in creating the culture and setting the stage. Because people look at you in the end. And with like to your question on the culture of like admitting to make a mistake,
Yeah.
I am. You need to be transparent as well. I mean, I'm always admitting when I was
Yeah.
wrong, and this is not a bad thing. It's just you need to like realize and draw your conclusions and learnings, and then move on and improve.
Yeah.
It's very simple, and by doing so, and by creating this psychological safe space, I would almost say it's perfectly fine if people are if they make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn and move on.
And when you were looking at building out this team and building out essentially your organizational structure, what were some things that that you liked from, you know, bureaucratic life, and that you maybe had to make different because of the setting of being a startup?
Yeah. So the what we tried in the beginning is to have um, very loose organizational structure, but we realized quite quickly that it makes perfect sense to basically have this org chart and be very basically very clear on, okay, who is
Yeah.
how are the teams set up, who is working with whom, basically what's this type of structure, because also this gives yeah, people can rely on that, and
Yeah.
it provides clarity. And this, I think, is a very important part, that you need to make sure as a founder that there is that the rules are clear, that there is clarity in the organization. Also, everyone needs to understand what is the vision, what are we trying to achieve, and set the stage in that sense.
Interesting. And would you say that's the number one thing that you would recommend people to do? And if not, what is the number one thing you would recommend to CEOs, or founders?
I think the most important thing,
Yeah.
and I underestimated this, and I still do, is communication, communication, communication. You need to enroll the entire team. You need to enroll your investors, your advisors. You need to make sure that everyone understands the
Yeah.
vision of the company and where you want to go with the company. And you cannot over communicate.
Yeah. So what do you think is the number one thing not to do? Like, and feel free to, you know, explain via maybe something that's happened, if there's like a story behind it. Yeah.
I think the one thing that you should not do is scale too fast, because you believe that you are at the stage where you can initiate the growth phase.
Yeah.
And because this will lead to you burn a lot of money, and maybe you have a lucky punch and everything works out perfectly fine, but chances are quite high that you are not there, and you just basically hired a bunch of people that yeah, and that the growth does not come. And I think this is one of the mistakes many people do. I did as well.
So take on essentially too much burn before the growth can really
Yes,
sustain it.
yes, and this is a super difficult
Yeah.
task, and I think there is a struggle imminent to it, because on the one hand side you need to develop product faster, you need to go to the market
Yeah.
faster, but still you always need to be conscious. Okay, do I really want to increase my burn? Because like every month that you have with a lower burn helps you in the long run tremendously. And I think that was a tough learning for me. And I advise everyone to stay lean as long as possible.
Yeah, I think people get really drawn into building a company, right?
Yeah.
As in you raise and then it's like the obvious next step is like let's go and hire a bunch of people. But that's maybe not the right thing to do.
No, but it's very hard because you believe
Yeah.
so much in the company and in the vision, and that this is the right thing to do, and you just need to move faster. So for me, this take a step back,
Yeah.
make sure that you are not overestimating basically your success or growth in the early phase is very important, I think.
And I wonder if that is also something that was a big shocker for you moving into being in a startup, because I'm guessing that resources were less limited at McKinsey, and then you came to Hi.Health, and I guess the constraints are different, right? Yeah.
At McKinsey, the one thing that you don't have is time, basically. So this is why you can then, why they help you with a lot of basically benefits. So people take care of booking your travels. You have people who improve the quality of your slides, who can proofread things. So because also you need to operate at this high level of excellence. But then in a startup, you don't have all of that, but you have more time in that sense,
Yeah.
and that's quite a difference. Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? Because when you're looking at, okay, how do I grow the company and how do I do anything? And you're talking to someone who's worked at a very big company, is the natural response not to just be like, okay, like let's hire someone to do that. You know what I mean?
I
Yeah.
think this is, and this would be very convenient, and I think if you people then, like, if your teams hire people too soon because they want to outsource certain
Yeah.
topics. But again, to my previous point, don't do that because you will have too much costs um, on your balance, and then you need to either most likely raise sooner, and that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. And how have you managed the kind of expectations with the team when you're going out and fundraising?
I think so we try to be very transparent in the company, so everyone knows where we are, what are we,
Yeah.
at what timelines and milestones are we looking, what are the milestones we need to achieve to basically raise the next round, and they also know roughly on basically what's the structure of the next round.
Yeah.
And so we try to be very transparent with the team because
Yeah.
I think it's also important for them. Um, and it turned out to work quite well,
Yeah.
to be honest. And I think it also gives them a lot of confidence in what we do, and
Yeah.
that it's not a black box to them. I think that's
Here's why I asked the question, because I think that transparency and radical candor, they work when things are going well. And fundraising is one of those situations where it's not to say it's going well or not well, but it is a lot of, us being founders having to hear a lot of no's, right? Like I have a friend who did 200 meetings just to get one yes. And that's not an uncommon story, right?
No.
So, how do you communicate, but then also not communicate all of the basically shit that hits you? Because no one else can really deal with it. And if you really tell people, like in your team, about like half of the shit that happens to you, they'll probably run away, right?
This is true, and I think this is. So I don't share all the no's that I
Yeah.
get on
Yeah.
when fundraising, because it's super draining. But I also think that they realize this otherwise, because like and I think this is like founder health. You get so many no's. It's a very draining process as well.
Yeah.
I feel because you believe so
Strongly.
strongly
Yeah.
in what you are building, and then receiving no's for various reasons, it's a tough time. And I think people realize that this is a tough time. And for in our company, whenever we do fundraising, I try to be very, I mean, open about the process that we are fundraising, open about the fact that there are many, many no's to get to one yes.
Yeah.
And that this is just the way it is, and also try to explain to the team why this is the case, because each fund has a certain
Yeah.
thesis. So sometimes you get the no, not because you have a poor business, but because
It's
just the
just not a
thesis
right
of the fund is
fit.
not right,
Yeah.
and they might not be able to help you, which is a good no in a sense. So I think there are a lot of nuances, and I try to share those nuances, and I also try to be transparent on how I feel, but not sharing too much. So I think there is, because it would also not make sense or bring any value to the team if I share all the
Yeah.
negative emotions from fundraising.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like it's good as well to be the emotional filter for like protector almost
Yeah.
to the team, where they don't have to see all of the bad. I mean, it seems like you've done pretty well with Hi.Health on this. And I wonder, in terms of, Hi.Health and what you're building in insurance, how you see insurance changing in the next 10 years.
Yeah. So I think as mentioned before, I think that private health insurance will become more and more important, and I think they are on a transition similar to what banks
Yeah.
had done like 10 to 15 years ago. So insurance companies are very much looking into becoming more user-centered,
Yeah.
also more efficient in their internal processes. So I think there's a lot of positive change ongoing. But on the other hand, and this is now my what I learned at McKinsey, or what I saw when being at McKinsey, I mean, insurance companies, they are large organizations, and you can't change those large organizations. It's like this big tanker on the sea, and you can't change
Yeah.
the direction that quickly, because also in those companies you need to enroll a lot of people. There are like concerns, people need to change, they need to adapt new ways of working.
Yeah.
So there is a huge challenge for insurance companies, but I think they are on it, and there is a lot of movement, I think.
And what is the one impact you want to leave on the world with Hi.Health?
So the impact that I want to leave is building on what I've said before, that private insurance will become more important over time, that we make the private health insurance more efficient, and provide a better user experience, so that people can afford and get access to healthcare no matter where they are and who they are.